Hello and welcome to another video in Zenatta Consulting's Zoho tutorial series. My name is Tyler Colt, and in this video, we're going to be walking through how to get started with Zoho Forms. This is a super useful app if you are using multiple different Zoho products, because it is super quick and easy to create a form that you can use either internally, where your own team is using it to submit data, or create a form that you can post up on your website or send directly to your clients for them to give you some information. Before we jump in, I do want to ask, if you find this video useful, please be sure to like and subscribe down below. That really helps us out, and it'll make sure that you see future videos when we post them that are similar to this one. So I'm in the Zoho Forms application right now. Currently, we don't have any forms created in this demo account. So step one is going to be to actually go ahead and create our form. So up here in the top right, we can do just that. So let's make a new form. In this case, again, as we kind of mentioned, you can create forms for a wide variety of use cases. They could be for anything from a contact us page on your website, a more targeted lead capture page, maybe getting a redirect from a Google ad. This could also be a contact support type of form that maybe routes into Zoho Desk. In this case, we're going to do an example of a contact us form. And then at the tail end of here, we'll actually get it integrated to the CRM so that we can see it kind of all come together. So let's give our form a name. We'll just call it contact us. Give it a description, something like, this form is our primary contact us form for our website. And I'll go ahead and create that. Alrighty, and so now we are ready to start building. So kind of the layout of the page here in the form builder is that over on the left-hand side, we have all the various fields that we can use. So everything from your standard just text fields, fields that will require numbers, kind of a pre-formatted address field, which can be kind of nice, phone and email. Of course, you have date fields, kind of like decision fields, pick one, pick many, pick it from a drop down or from a series of checkboxes. Also have the ability to capture website fields where it will require like a proper website format, as well as currency, file upload, image upload, you name it, you're pretty much able to do that here with your basic fields. Over on the advanced fields side of things, we're not going to cover many of these in much detail here. You can actually capture payment through a Zoho form. Oftentimes, if you are using a lot of different Zoho apps, there's probably a better way to get paid than with a Zoho form. But for something simple, it is nice to have. You can also reference directly into CRM data within a Zoho form. Generally speaking, if you're going to be doing anything external with this form, like putting it on your website, you wouldn't use that. But for something internal, that can be pretty useful. And then you can add, formulas that kind of populate on the fly, subforms if you want to have kind of like a table that lives inside of the form itself, as well as, choose between images, terms and conditions, a signature, and then a matrix choice, which kind of gives them a, one-by-one access where they can pick various fields. For this use case specifically, we're going to keep it pretty simple. We're just going to be focusing on what it would take to create a contact us form that lives on our website. So let's go ahead and start adding some fields. So we know we're definitely going to want the name. You'll see this is formatted first and last. Generally, again, if you're using forms with any Zoho application, they're going to store names as first and last. So you want to do it this way rather than having one field that would store their full name. We'll also go ahead and grab their phone and email because we know we always want those. We could capture their address, and I'll show this just so you can see the field. It kind of gives you this nice laid out address field rather than having, one by one for each individual field. In here, you can also choose what you want to include. So maybe I want to say, hey, I don't care about address line 2. I'll just go ahead and get rid of that. For now, I'm going to remove our address field. We don't really normally capture that on just like a lead capture page. You wouldn't want to give them quite so many fields that they'll need to work on. So I'll get rid of that for now. So we've captured their phone, their name, their email, and now we'll need to think about some more things that are maybe custom for the specific type of form that we're working on. So to understand like where the additional fields that you would add to a form would come from, we'll actually go ahead and jump to the CRM real quick, kind of show you how you might determine what should be included on a form. So here in our demo account, I've gone ahead and set up a few custom fields in a lead. So, of course, in a lead, we'll have our last name, our first name, contact information. Here we'll see that we've got a lead form information section, which I've created kind of for this purpose. I have, imagining that we're a migration company here, we maybe have two options, either a CRM migration and an accounting migration. And then based on what they're interested in, maybe I'd have some additional fields where I ask them what they're currently using to accomplish that. I'm also seeing here that the company is a required field in our CRM. So anything that is a required field, wherever you're going to send the data, you're going to have to add something to be able to store that value. So keeping this in mind, that this is kind of our key information here is, what type of migration someone might be interested in. We can jump back over to the form. First, we'll go ahead and add a company field because we did see that that is required. So what I've done is I've just dragged in one of our single line fields, and I'll call that company. Maybe I want to make this mandatory, thinking about how it is required over on the CRM side. I can do that here under the little field editor and make that a mandatory value. While we're thinking about this, we should probably do the same for our name fields. So we'll need the first and last. We can do the same for the phone number. And then last but not least, we can do the same for their email address. So now that we've set up kind of like the most basic info that we would need to be able to create a lead, now we can start to do things that are a little bit fancier. So let's say we want to add a drop-down field that will basically line up with our migration service interest field with our two options of CRM or accounting migration. So I've dragged over a drop-down field, and then under the settings here, I'll give it a name. We call it migration type. It's only going to have two options. We'll go with CRM migration or accounting migration. A couple other options here is you can kind of adjust the width of the field. Generally want to keep it small unless the data requires it. Neither of these are very long, so we'll just leave that as a small field. And then here, maybe we do want to make this mandatory because, we're thinking about if we're going to get in touch with this person, I might have a different salesperson call them based on whether they need an accounting or a CRM migration. So we'll go ahead and make that mandatory. And then last but not least, based on if they choose a CRM or accounting migration, we'll need to kind of show the next question, which is what are you currently using for either of those tools? So what I'll do here is I'll drag in a current CRM and a current accounting system field that we'll be able to use here. And now what we'll dive into in a second is kind of how we would conditionally show the second field based on the option here. But before we get into that, I want to show one last little thing that we'll need to do in terms of adding fields to our form. So up here, if we look at the create a lead page, so we've covered now a lot of the information that we would want to ask the lead when they're filling out the form. What's your name? What are you interested in? What company do you work for? And how do I get in touch with you? Right? But there's a couple other things on this page that we don't really want to have empty, but that we're not going to ask the lead. An example of that would be something like lead status, right? So we don't want a lead to come in without a lead status, but we're not going to put this dropdown on the form and ask them, what status are you, right? No one's going to pick junk, right? They're probably just not going to answer this question. So in this case, based on our list here of lead statuses, we would want new leads to come in as not contacted because we've not gotten in touch with them yet. And so to do that, what we can do is actually add a field here. So we'll add a single line field. We'll go ahead and edit this. We'll call it lead status. And here we'll set an initial value of not contacted. And this initial value should basically just represent what you would want the default value here to be for the field wherever you're sending this data. The last thing we'll want to do is actually go ahead and hide this field. So we can actually have, little parameters or fields on our form that are going to be included every time, but that aren't actually shown to the lead or to the existing customer, based on what type of form you're using. Another one that we would probably want to kind of add and hide would be something like lead source. We always want to know kind of like where people are coming from and where, any of our leads are sourced from, so we can understand kind of the effectiveness or, our ability to successfully capture leads based on these different sources. So for that, we'll go ahead and add another single line field. And we'll call this lead source. And we'll give it an initial value of contact us form. And then we'll hide it. So very similar to what we did for lead status, just doing it for a different field. And so when we get into how we would actually go ahead and integrate this with the CRM, you'll kind of see the purpose of these fields in that they give us the ability to send data that we're not needing to ask the customer. It's things that we know about them already based on what form they're filling out. So with that, now that we've kind of set up the core fields that we want to have on our form, let's get into how we would set up some kind of dynamic rules about this form, either based on specific fields or based on the form being submitted. Alrighty, and now to actually go ahead and set up those kind of rules or logic that we might want on the form, we'll jump over to this next tab called rules. And so the rule that we kind of want to set up here is, based on the migration type, either CRM or accounting migration, we want to show and require either current CRM or current accounting system. And so we'll jump on over to the rules section. We'll see that there are 3 types of rules. So the first one are field-based rules. So that's what we're going to use here. A field-based rule basically says if field 1 equals A, then show field 2. And if field 1 does not equal A, then don't show field 2. You can also run form rules. So this would be a specific kind of logical criteria about what should happen when the form is submitted. You can do a lot with this. So you could say, if the migration type was CRM, then redirect them to a booking page with the CRM team. And if it was accounting, then redirect them to the accounting team page. You could also say if their company size was below 20, right, then send them this kind of email, right? A lot of different things you can do when the form is submitted based on that type. And then lastly, what we can do here with page rules is kind of a setup, kind of a more expansive way to do the redirects and management there once the form is actually submitted. So for this one, we'll get started by setting up a field rule. So here we'll go ahead and configure now. We'll say that this is the migration type rule. So here we're looking at our conditions. So it's set up as an if-then statement. So if any or all of the criteria are met, in this case, we're just going to have one. So if migration type, is CRM migration, then show current CRM, right? So we can kind of set these up to say, based on this input value, do this other thing. So I'll go ahead and add that. And now, so we've set up the rule here for CRM migration. We'll need to add another rule for what should happen if it's an accounting migration. And so we'll say if the migration type is accounting migration, then show the current accounting systems. So go ahead and add that as well. And so now we've kind of set up some rules and logic here to only show the field that we actually need on that page. And so you'll notice that here, it's not saying that we're going to make this required. What you would do if you wanted this field to be required if the migration type is CRM migration is we can actually come over to the builder and make it required here. Now, the trick is, and they don't really say this anywhere, but the trick is that if you make one of these fields mandatory, it's only mandatory if it's shown. So if migration type is CRM, current accounting system isn't shown and it's made non-mandatory automatically. So we don't really need to worry about that too much. Under the form rules, we have some additional options here. So let's say that we wanted to say, if our migration type is CRM, I'll set up our criteria. And then we have the option to redirect them, right, to a particular page. This can either be like a Zoho thank you page or a custom redirect. At Zenatta, we actually do this to redirect them to Calendly. So when you fill out the form on our website, which is a Zoho form, it basically will open up a Calendly page internally within that same embed. So it's kind of all one process to get in touch. Other things that you can do other than page redirects here are assign tasks, send emails, send SMS, or send a push notification to a mobile device. So pretty robust ability to build out workflow. Now, I do want to highlight one thing about this is that we'll generally only use the form rules to do redirects. And the reason is that if I'm going to go ahead and say that I want to email someone when this form is filled out and the type is CRM migration, generally speaking, we'll set up that workflow in the CRM rather than within Zoho Forms. It just makes it a little bit easier to manage on an ongoing basis so that you know that all of your if-then statements related to leads all live inside of CRM. All of your if-then statements related to tickets live over inside of Desk, and kind of just limits the amount of different places where emails are coming from so that if you want to adjust something, a lot easier to find where to go to actually do that. So now let's kind of take a look at our form live in the wild here. So we've set up our fields, we've set up our rules. Next is time to kind of play with it a bit. So I'll go ahead and access form here in the top right. We'll see that, it's got a place for my name. My phone and my email. We'll notice that once I choose CRM migration, it'll show and require that field. And if I choose accounting migration, it will show and require that field. Last thing to highlight here is that we want to make sure that lead status and lead source are not showing. So they are there, but they're hidden so that when the actual user is filling out this form, they're not being asked those questions. And so now I can go ahead and submit my form. As people are submitting forms, of course, the ideal state is that this data is flowing to a different application, whether that's CRM, Desk, Analytics, Projects, something outside of Zoho. It's all fair game. If you ever do need to see all of the form submissions inside of Forms, maybe there's some type of error, some type of issue, you can always jump into all entries up here in the top right. And that will show each and every time that the form has ever been submitted, as well as when the submission came through. And then in here, we've got the ability to export this or send it out as a PDF. All righty. So now we've kind of filled out our form once and seen how it looks. The next big step when you're building out a form is to run through a couple various bits of settings just to make sure that you've got it how you need it. So one important setting here right out of the gate under settings in general is the form header. If you want to show this part up here, you'll leave this as show. Otherwise, you can hide it. This will really only matter depending on where you're going to put this form. So if you wanted to embed this on your website, and maybe you had a whole page built around your contact us, you might not want to have this here. So you can just go ahead and remove that, right? And now you kind of have just the clean form that you can embed without any extra text that you don't need. Kind of flying through some of the settings. Of course, you can adjust date and time formats. You can capture geolocation and IP address of the submitter of the form. Set up kind of like a little bit of look and feel around the web page itself that it's going to be hosted on. Another one that can be important here is if you want to do a redirect and there aren't any rules involved, you can set that up here under acknowledgement and redirects. Zoho Forms do have the ability to do save and resume. The save and resume works via an email link, which is important to know. It's not going to save it live on the website. They'll get an email and use that to actually go through and finish the form. A couple other ones that come up pretty often here as we're building out Zoho Forms, things like notifications, right? So again, while you can set these all up under form rules, if you didn't care about having any logic on that, you could have these actually send out notifications just directly from forms. Last but not least are tasks here within Zoho Forms. You don't want to use these, have a task get created in Desk or in CRM or in whatever application this data is going to. You don't really want to have people jumping into Zoho Forms to look at tasks. It's just not really the place to go for that. Kind of running across the next tab on the top is the ability to apply themes to the form. So right now we're kind of just rocking the standard theme. Zoho Forms does come out of the gate with a whole wide set of kind of default themes. So I'll go ahead and just apply this one. It's kind of funny here, the sunset theme. Once I now give this a refresh, we'll see that the whole look and feel of the form has been updated. I'm going to set this back to default just for a second. And we'll see on this side, now it's back to how we had it before. Now with the theme editor, I want to show one thing that we do for a lot of clients. So it's pretty common that people will say, hey, look, these themes are great and all, but our web development team and our design team does a better job on our website than these themes do on the form. So people will basically just say, give me the form, but with no formatting. I just want a blank page just with the fields on top of it, and I'll do the rest of the design. That's pretty common. And so if you wanted to do that, you could come in here to customize the form. This is actually a very robust editor. So you can do a lot with this. You can generally use this to create most of the theming that you need, which just cuts down on the amount of HTML and kind of CSS that you're writing. But if you already had everything laid out on the site and you just wanted a really clean, minimal embed that you could just drop in, what you would do is in the form customization tab, you can come in and update, all these various elements of, the form itself, and basically start setting your backgrounds to opaque. So I can say, make the wallpaper opaque, make the background of the form container not have a fill. So we'll see it's basically going from, this section here to now being totally empty. I could come in and say, hey, I don't want this border, right? So make the border have a transparent color, right? And come through here and just adjust any of these elements of the form, based on how you want it to look. I'll go ahead and apply that here. And then now over on our form, if we give this a reset, we'll see that all that formatting has been stripped off, right? So now you just have these transparent fields that can be dropped into any web page and basically fit the formatting of that page. So again, pretty powerful tool. You can get these to look really nice, but 9 times out of 10, what we've found is that most people just want the formatting gone, and then they want to drop it onto their website natively and just have it, match whatever is on the page already. Second to last section here that we'll go through is the ability to get this form out, send it out to people either within or outside of your organization. So this access form link here, this is actually an internal link. So if you wanted to give this form to one of your clients and have them fill it in, this link would not work. We would need to grab this permalink for the form here. It looks identical, right, when you get to the page, but it's just a link that's set up for non-logged in users to be able to work with the form. The big use case that we find most of the time is setting these up as embeds. And so this would be if you wanted this on your website, right? You could choose either an iframe or a JavaScript to go ahead and embed this. We do recommend JavaScript if you're able to work with it, because it will size the height of the form dynamically. So you don't have to kind of like tweak the pixel heights and, monkey around with it that way. You just drop the JavaScript directly on your website and then have that ability to post it, start capturing submissions, and have a lot of the sizing of it just done dynamically by the JavaScript itself. One thing to note with this as well is that once you've embedded a form, if you ever come to the form and update it, maybe I add a new field or I do something new with the form, it's going to update automatically on the website. So you don't need to re-embed this in order to see the changes that were made to the form. We'll probably do a whole separate video on this, but under the share, we have this track entries area. This is a very powerful tool inside of Zoho Forms that actually works extremely well for tracking UTM parameters. So this comes into play if you're running like Google ads, right? And you wanted to be able to capture your campaign, your click ID, your search term, all those various fields that will come in as UTMs. If you want to track that, you'll basically just need to define what parameters you care about, and then drop a little piece of tracking code onto your website. And this will basically just be scraping web visitors for those UTMs. And then when they submit the form, it'll pass that data along with it over to CRM, desk, really wherever this is going. I'm going to turn this off just for now, but just important to know that this is here because it's a pretty great feature inside of Zoho Forms. We use it internally. We use it for tons of clients. Not everyone knows that it's here, so we like to highlight that. Now, the last and maybe most important thing with Zoho Forms is what happens when they're filled out. If a form is filled out and nobody's notified, it's almost like it didn't get filled out in the first place. So forms can integrate to a wide variety of Zoho apps, everything from CRM, desk, campaigns, recruit, projects, the whole kind of whole gauntlet of applications, as well as third-party apps like Salesforce, Google Sheets, Teams. It can post webhooks if you want to do something custom. So pretty powerful tool. For right now, we're going to just show it focused on CRM. So I'll go ahead and integrate with CRM here. It's already pulled from the proper organization. So I'll need to tell it what module I want to send the data to. So in this case, it'll be leads. And then I just need to essentially line up my fields. So on the left-hand side, I have the field in CRM. And on the right, I have the field inside of Zoho Forms. And I'll kind of run down the list here. So we'll want to grab first name. Want to do our email. Do our phone number. We'll do some of those hidden fields that we want, lead source, lead status as well. We'll do our migration type. We'll notice here that the fields do not need to match in their names. They just need to match in the type of data that they're capturing. So you don't need to if you're using like an internal term for something, you don't need to show them that term, right? You can call it whatever you want to on the form. as long as you line it up to the proper field over on the CRM side. Alrighty, and now we basically mapped all of the fields that we need. Down here at the bottom, there are a couple kind of actions that are important. If you want this form to trigger CRM automations, you want to check that box. 9 times out of 10, that's a yes. So we want to add that. You can also have it upsert records. So this basically means that when it is writing to the leads module, it will check and see if the lead already exists based on email in this case. And if it does, we can have it update the values in that record. Generally, we want to have that on just to prevent duplicate records from being generated. Lastly, here, we can also decide to add any attachments from the form directly to that record. If you didn't have any attachment fields, then you could choose to add the PDF copy of that form just directly into the CRM as an attachment. So I'll go ahead and save that integration. And now if I access the form here to kind of take it all the way full circle, and I fill in some info. Say we're doing a CRM migration from Salesforce. I'll go ahead and submit our form. And now, because we have it integrated with the CRM, over here on the leads list, sometimes it'll take just a moment here, we'll see our lead pop on over to the CRM. So we're going to pause for a sec, kind of Martha Stewart this and pull it out of the oven once that lead shows up here. Alrighty, and so I gave that thing one more refresh, and now we have that lead that we submitted. So we'll see that, it's captured our name, first and last, captured the service interest and the current CRM that I have. It's not captured in accounting software because based on our rule, we didn't ask them that question. And then it's also grabbed our phone number, our email, the company that I added, and then our lead source and lead status. Then from there, you would essentially just work this lead in your CRM, just the same as all the rest. And any future form submissions from wherever you have this form are all going to flow just directly in how that one did. So I think that sums up kind of how to use Zoho Forms at a high level. I do really hope that this video was useful for you. If it was, again, we'd love if you would like and subscribe down below, as that really helps us out and will make sure that you see future videos that we post like this one. Thanks again for watching.